Welcome back to PC-98 Paradise, the series where we take a close look at classic games for the NEC PC-98, the most popular Japanese PC series of the early 1990s. Today's game is a cowboy RPG that was only released on the PC-98 and has never been translated to English. I wonder who made this one. So continuing on from my recent video on Right Stuff's very first game, Al Shark, today's game is the second one they released for the PC-98 in 1992. They did release Sid Mead's Terraforming on the PC Engine between these two games though. Today we're looking at, excuse my pronunciation, Libros de Chilam Balam. Now the title means Books of Chilam Balam, which are a real thing. Manuscripts documenting traditional Mayan traditions and beliefs written in the Latin alphabet by a priest called Chilam Balam. The manuscripts include, most notably in relation to this game, Mayan beliefs about the destruction and recreation of the world. So this game is going to be about cowboys who discover the secrets of the old Mayan gods. But this game goes a bit further than that and asks the question, what if the gods the Mayans were describing were actually the same ones from the Cthulhu mythos created by H.P. Lovecraft? Now then you would have a crazy idea for a game. I love the gothic cover art here done by Jun Suemi, who is the main illustrator for the Wizardry series in Japan. You've definitely seen his work before, since he also did the cover art for all of these games, among others. He even did the cover art for these Game Arts games, as well as most of the Brandish series. Now those are games near and dear to my heart. Unfortunately, he typically only does cover and promotional art, and the actual character design and in-game character graphics for Chilam Balam were done by someone else. As someone who can't draw at all, I hate to be critical, but some of the cutscene graphics in Chilam Balam look kind of weird. And is it just me, or doesn't the main character look kind of like Gillian Seed from Snatcher? It's probably just the coat and hairstyle, though. On the back, we've got... oh yeah, what the hell happened here? I just picked up this copy of the game recently, and at first I thought someone had probably just damaged it trying to remove a sticker. But why did they have to tear the paper insert along with the plastic? My leading theory now is that some kind of animal must have gotten hold of this game, which is a shame because otherwise it's in really good condition. Anyway, on the back, H.P. Lovecraft and his Cthulhu mythos are mentioned by name, and you thought I was joking, didn't you? The text also brags about 3D battle scenes, a complex character building system that goes beyond mere experience points, and books you'll have to study in order to learn how to deal with the different enemies. We'll find out if any of these features are worth the hype later. The inner contents are in pristine condition. I seriously wonder if anyone even played this copy of the game before me. We have a warranty card, a survey card, and this probably never used manual. The front pages are in color and include character profiles and illustrations, followed by the main section of the manual in black and white. And in the back we have a color monster manual, as well as the villains of the game. The game discs are stored in this nice Right Stuff box and consist of 6 floppies, all of which have funny little illustrations of the characters on them. Now, given that this game was released in 1992, it wouldn't really be weird if it had hard drive support, but it's right around the cutoff date and this game still needs to be played directly from the floppy disks. To start, we simply boot Disk A. Chilam Balam is unfortunately not as tolerant of faster PC-98 systems as Al Shark was, and I had to switch the CPU speed down to middle to even get past the opening. But anyway, once we've done that, here's what happens. We see 2 men turning around to see one of their companions getting shot by a strange group of robed figures. And in case it wasn't enough that this guy already has 2 arrows stuck in him, the black magic of the robed strangers causes him to explode. Then we see the title logo in front of a golden mask. I'm having flashbacks to Azteca 2 already. The rest of the opening shows the harrowing escape from the robed figures. The leader of the fleeing group is an adventurer named Nicholas J. Anderson, and this isn't important, but his carriage driver's name is either Clap or Crap, and the reason it isn't important is because immediately he gets shot, and Nicholas shouts, "Crap!" Much more important to remember is Nicholas's young companion, Maximilian J. Squire, who we'll know simply as Max. Max jumps on the carriage in order to take over for Crap at the reins. I really don't get much sense of motion here during what should be an intense action scene. Max throws a stick of dynamite in order to collapse the walls of the canyon they're driving through and make their escape. The opening ends with Max pondering what Nicholas could possibly be carrying that would cause such a dangerous group of mysterious people to come after them. Surprisingly though, he seems to think he has a hunch what it could be, as he curves his lips into a demented-looking grin. It's always really hard to tell though, with the art style in this game, whether the character's creepy facial expressions are intentional or not. So we get to the main menu, and here I ran into more trouble. Selecting Start a New Game causes the game to simply freeze up. I tried a number of things to fix this, before I just tried selecting Continue instead. We are then asked to insert Disk B in Drive 1 and Disk C in Drive 2. And as I expected, there were no game saves, giving me further reason to believe that no one had played this copy of the game before. So I backed out and tried selecting New Game again, and to my surprise, the game started. So it actually turns out that this game is notoriously buggy, and there's a list of bugs and issues on the Japanese Wikipedia page. The first one being that they forgot to add the disk change prompt for starting a new game, leading the author here to speculate that no one even bothered to playtest the game at all. Indeed, you'd think that would be something they'd notice. So anyway, our story begins in northern New Mexico in the 19th century, where we meet our protagonist, Wilfred R. Anderson, or Fred for short. Fred is the son of Nicholas, who we saw in the opening, and since those mysterious events that took place 7 years ago, Nicholas was never seen again. Fred still hopes that he will somehow find his father, who he sees as a hero. In the meantime, he has been doing some bounty hunting and various cowboy work along with his partner, Max, who we also saw in the opening. Max was the sole survivor of that ill-fated mission, but he has no recollection of how he survived that day. Fred and Max are discussing their next job when Max's mother asks Fred to go find his girlfriend, Chris, so that she can take measurements for a dress she is making for Chris's birthday party. Christina A. Wakeman is the fiery daughter of a lawyer who has dreams of becoming a female gunslinger. So okay, let's go find Chris. Wait a second, this seems way too fast. I can't play like this. The system is still in CPU mode middle, but switching it down to low makes it way too slow. So long story short, I used my favorite utility ER cache again to adjust the speed in this one too. I couldn't find any good reference videos showing the correct speed for this one, so I just settled on this, which feels about right. Coincidentally enough, the opening BGM also seems to line up just about right when using these settings. So I think we're good, let's move on. The gamepad support in this one is perfect again, and we can use the system menu to create a user disk. It's actually just a copy of disk B, so that we won't have to swap disks when we save. The manual recommends that you don't save to the original disk B though, in order to prevent corrupting it. So it turns out that the reason we can't find Chris is because she's been kidnapped. Max delivers the bad news to Fred when he's searching for her at the saloon. He then gives Fred his first gun of the game, the reliable Peacemaker.
Where'd you get that pretty little gun? Hey, I'm talking to you. Where'd you get that pretty little gun?
To help find Chris, they also employ the help of a bounty hunter and peddler of ancient wares, named Edward. Now we can leave town, and anyway, here's the battle system, which looks more like something from Phantasy Star 2 rather than what you'd expect from a cowboy RPG. It's a pretty typical battle system, except it uses a front and back row of enemies. When using short-range weapons like Edward's shotgun, the front row is easier to hit, and both enemies in the row will be hit due to the shotgun's wide range. Fred and Max have revolvers instead, which are more capable of hitting even the enemies in back. Oh yeah, and unlike Alshark and Emerald Dragon, you can actually control all your party members here, and all party members need to die before you get game over, just like in any normal RPG. The battles are so easy, by the way, that I barely ever saw the game over screen in this game, and thus I never once had to deliberately grind for experience either. That's a huge contrast from Alshark. The only part where it might be good to get a little experience is right here at the beginning, where Fred starts off with such a low HP max that he just keeps dying right away. I didn't realize it, but there's an easy way to get around this. The enemies mostly keep wailing on your party leader, so just change the character order to make Max or Edward the leader for a while instead. After the battles, you get experience and a few grams of ore, which you can exchange for dollars and cents to buy stuff. The overworld areas are seldom difficult to navigate, but I'm genuinely curious to know if any of you dear viewers have been bothered yet by the weird shape of the HUD. It looks good on the battle screen, but when walking around, the viewable area is actually this weird shape when you think about it. Personally, I didn't even notice it until I was pretty far into the adventure. The first section of the game has you traveling around New Mexico in order to rescue Chris. Her kidnappers, for some reason, want an old antique gun that was left by Fred's father. In the process of trying to save Chris, the party manages to accidentally allow the gun to slip into the hands of the kidnappers, who then pass it on to the interested buyer, before the party does battle with and successfully defeats the kidnappers. Then Chris turns up safe and sound. She thanks Max and Edward, but mostly complains at Fred for taking so long to come save her. Well, that's it, she's safe. I guess we can all go home. But now the party suddenly seems to care a lot more about the lost antique gun than they do about Chris. Fred thinks that searching for it will lead him to clues about his father. Chris joins the party and they chase after the gun. Chris doesn't get to stay in the party for long though, as we end up filling her character slot with a former soldier and old friend of Fred's father named Richard. Chris is then told to go home since the adventure will be too dangerous from here on. She definitely wasn't the strongest party member, so I can kind of understand the logic. Still, it's kind of strange that they tell her to just find her way home from this town. If I were them, I'd keep a close eye on her from now on. But anyway, the party heads next for Texas on horseback, and we are asked to insert disc D and drive 2 in order to watch the first cutscene. In the cutscene, the party is attacked by the same robed cult members from the opening, but they are saved by a woman named Luca Moratz. What kind of name is that anyway? Probably the less said about the depictions of indigenous peoples in this game, the better, but suffice to say that this was made in 1992 Japan, and presumably they based it all on what they had seen in old American cowboy movies and spaghetti westerns. Like Fred, Luca is also looking for her father, the chief of her village, who went missing when the village was burned years ago, and his body was never found. So now we're in Texas.
Honest, listen, I'll prove it.
The stars at night are big and bright. Deep in the heart of Texas.
Luca is, of course, an archer. She also teaches Fred to use ancient magic. The spells in this game are a bit clumsily divided into standard magic, attack magic, and summon magic. Why Fred's magic is all considered standard magic, despite containing some attack spells, I'm really not sure. I wish they had used the spell categories as a means to organize the spells better. It's pretty cumbersome having to toggle through all the spells in order to find the ones you want. And also summon magic isn't nearly as interesting as it sounds, cause in the end they're all just normal spells with effects similar to the other ones. You probably noticed already that this game has not only HP, but also PP, which is what they called the HP in Alshark. But here HP is just HP and PP is MP. The only weird thing about PP is that there are some enemies who can take away PP instead of HP, and characters will also die if they lose all their PP.
Listen, I've had it with you. You better give me that PP. Give it to me, or the next time you sit on me, I'm gonna bite off your tushy. Yes! Yes!
Between every battle, you can use the rest command to recover your PP, and thus also your HP via healing magic. What an easy game. And here's where the complex character building system mentioned on the back comes in. In addition to regular experience, using any weapon or spell will make that character gradually improve at being able to use that particular weapon or spell. That's it. And it's really hard to notice weapons or spells getting any better. Another thing you can do is modify your guns at the gun shops. There are certain mods you can have done on each one, and I guess you might as well just pay for all of them in order to make the guns better. The only thing you might want to avoid is a mod that will increase the precision of a shotgun, making its attack no longer multi-enemy. And as for the books that are supposed to tell you how to deal with each enemy, there's an in-game menu where you can access them. Someone had to draw all this pixel art for these enemies, and I barely even looked at it. Anyway, I think you can safely ignore all of this and the character building system and just play it like any old RPG. You'll easily figure out which attacks work best on which enemies through trial and error, and since the battles are so easy in this game anyway, you'll get through just fine. All of these touted features are really just unneeded fluff. That being said, the battle system isn't necessarily bad either. It's perfectly functional and provides some decent enough fun if you like standard old school RPGs. In Texas, the party hears about a rich businessman who everyone loves named McNeil, but it doesn't take long to learn that he's actually no good, and everyone's just too afraid to say anything bad about him. The party has a hunch that finding him will bring them closer to their objectives, but he's currently in Mexico, so that's where they head next. In Mexico, we have to exchange all our dollars for gold dust. Guess pesos weren't in use yet. We also can't understand what anyone's saying, and so Richard gives Fred a 3-day crash course in Spanish, which of course Richard can do since he once stayed in Mexico for a week. After that, we can speak to all the Mexican NPCs. The section in Mexico is the longest part of the game. In a cave here, we can find the game's only other true bug. You have to use a stone to stop the flow of water here so that you can proceed forward, but you also need to be able to get back out of the cave later. The problem is, if you should save and load your game on this screen, the water will suddenly reappear and you can become permanently stuck either inside the water or to the left of it here. You should probably just avoid ever saving your game on this screen at all, and of course always stagger your saves as much as possible. I use tons of user discs. It's in this section of the game where we are joined by an archaeologist friend of Edward's named Roger. This is great because in Roger we finally have a party member who can explain some of the mysterious ancient Mayan stuff we've started to find. There's one particular Mayan beast we fight where Roger says the party can't win and we have to run away. You win by running away, but here's another issue listed on Wikipedia. Fred can actually deal damage to the boss, and so it will die if you put in enough time and effort. I managed to do it, but unfortunately nothing happens. You don't get any experience, and you're just shown the same cutscene as if you had run away. Not really a problem either way. And in fact, most of the bullet points listed here are just minor issues with the game's balancing rather than actual bugs. Though it would be fair enough to call the game buggy, I wouldn't call it janky or unstable. The game never once crashed or froze up on me. The story has tons of unexpected twists and reveals that I don't want to spoil for those who want to experience the game for themselves. However, keep in mind that the game currently has no English patches when deciding whether or not to continue watching. So, a lot of the characters die in this game. Way back in the first cutscene where we met Luca, Max actually died. And I thought he was going to be in the party for the whole game. He was killed by the same cult members he successfully escaped from with Fred's father in the opening sequence. The next one to go is Richard. He gets caught by a boss we had just beaten, which had suddenly returned to life in the cutscene afterward. In order to allow Fred and Luca to escape, he sacrificed himself using a stick of dynamite. And next we have a double whammy. Edward and Roger. They get killed by that boss I was supposed to run away from, but was actually able to kill. Guess this boss was also definitely not dead. By this point in the game, Fred has retrieved his dad's antique gun from the bad guys, and we find out that it is a mystical artifact called the Mirror Crash, which uses the spiritual energy of the bearer to destroy ancient demons. Fred and Luca travel to the place where it was created, an alternate world called Dream Earth. It's a place where human spirits sometimes wander while they're dreaming, and where it is rare for fleshy humans like Fred and Luca to travel while still in their physical bodies. This part of the game has all new music, even for the battle scenes, and feels really different from the rest of the game. What happened to my cowboy RPG?
When did we get to Disneyland?
Dream Earth is another long section of the game where we'll learn more ancient secrets related to the Mayans and Aztecs, mixed in with a little H.P. Lovecraft. It also turns out that Dream Earth isn't such a dreamy place at all. The people there age and die just like us, and it's ruled by a handful of warring monarchies. Fred and Luca are joined by Vivian, a native of Dream Earth who lives with her cats, the only animals allowed in Dream Earth, and who can also speak here. They allow Vivian to use cat magic. We are also joined by a fellow human who arrived in Dream Earth a little earlier to study its secrets, an archaeologist and colleague of Roger's named Sylvia. She's a powerful magic user, and so I ended up relegating Luca mostly to archer duties for the remainder of the game. At the end of Dream Earth, we meet a giant, the last of a once godlike species. He's the one who created Fred's Mirror Crash, and here he powers it up for him so that it's even better for the rest of the game. The giant created the Mirror Crash in order to destroy an ancient artifact called the Golden Mask. This mask was created by ancient people in order to summon this evil sun god, which was the actual name of a god worshipped by the Aztecs, Mayans, and Olmecs. The mask was the secret cargo that Fred's father was carrying in the opening sequence, and what caused him to get attacked by the mysterious cult. The rest of the game will see the party return to the real world to destroy the mask. Sylvia comes along with Fred and Luca, but Vivian stays in Dream Earth. The party finds themselves back in Mexico, but this time in front of a new town, which conveniently happens to be the same town where Max had gone missing for 2 years with amnesia after the fateful events of the opening sequence. The perfect place to tie up all the loose ends of the plot. There we find Luca's father, who unfortunately is one of the bad guys, and was actually the leader of the group who attacked Fred's father in the opening sequence. Luca won't forgive her father, and decides that her father died years ago when her village burned. We end up killing him near the very end of the game. But Luca's father also shows us Fred's father, who has been previously used as a host to revive that evil sun god mentioned earlier. The process unfortunately turned him into a half-human, half-jaguar who can no longer speak. The one who did this was none other than Max, who is from a divine bloodline and had his ancient memories reawakened when he first came in contact with the mask, shortly after the events of the opening sequence. So Max has actually been one of the bad guys all along, and he is also very much still alive, as he explains that he is immortal. He will be the end boss of the game. But before that, Chris comes back into the picture. She gets kidnapped and we have to rescue her again. I knew they should have kept a closer eye on her. McNeil and his partner, who of course are also involved in the cults trying to revive the sun god, try to sacrifice her. And yes, she is naked here, but it's very simple pixel art. Grow up. We of course make quick work of the bad guys here, but what did they want with Chris? Turns out she is from the bloodline of another ancient Mayan god, and the only one who can stop Max. And this is mentioned as one of the game's balance issues on Wikipedia, but when she joins the party again at the end of the game, her magic is so powerful that it makes the other magic users you've been building up throughout the entire game practically useless in comparison. Okay, so when the party finally meets Max again, it turns out that he and Sylvia have a history together. Sylvia is the daughter of the kind family who gave Max a home during the 2 years when he had amnesia, but who Max sacrificed to the sun god after he got his memories back. What an asshole. These other jaguar people with Fred's father are Sylvia's family. Max is actually in love with Sylvia, though, and had thought that she was dead. He asks Sylvia to join him, but when she refuses, he kills her. Sylvia gives Chris her pendant with her last breath, saying it will awaken her true power. She also tells the party to check her belongings, where they find one of the books of Chilam Balam, which Chris finds she can read, and which powers up her magic even further. At the end of the last dungeon is the final showdown with Max. The mask turns him into a jaguar, and it briefly looks like the party is in trouble, but then they are saved by Edward? Gotta be honest, I really wasn't expecting to see him alive ever again. And so, Fred, Luca, Chris, and Edward are the final party, and they easily defeat Max on the first try since the battles are so easy in this game. Though Max is gone, the mask itself attacks the party in the ending cutscene. It turns into Nyarlathotep, who is usually considered to be the main antagonist of Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. Cthulhu himself never does appear in the game, by the way. Chris fends off the evil god with her power, but she can't hold him forever. Fred puts an end to him by destroying the mask with the mirror crash, but it's too late. Chris is dead, but not for long. Sylvia's pendant revives her, and it disappears. And is it just me, or does this part really feel like a ripoff of the ending of Ninja Gaiden 2? Chris's hair changes color, which I guess means that she's lost her power. Next, Edward reveals that he's just a spirit projection made by the giant on Dream Earth, and I'm not 100% sure, but I think that means he's dead. The others react surprisingly cheerfully to this news, and Edward disappears. I'm actually kind of surprised it's never explained what happened to Roger, but I guess it's pretty safe to assume he's dead too. Fred invites Luca to come live in their village with them, but she refuses. Besides, she says, she wants to find a place to come home to of her own, which if I'm reading the nuance here correctly, actually means she wants to find someone to love of her own. Man, it's sort of too bad for Luca that Chris is still alive. I thought Fred and Luca were a pretty good couple. And so it's the credits, followed by a shot of Fred carrying Chris home, before the final shot showing Luca looking out over what I guess is Fred's village. The end. I get the feeling that Right Stuff weren't quite able to dedicate sufficient attention to the development of this game, as evidenced by the lack of playtesting or ports of the game. Their A-team from Alshark was busy working on Fiend Hunter for the PC Engine, which I would wager was probably a more profitable platform for them. Thus, Chilam Balam only shares a few of the same credits as Alshark, with many of them only appearing in the special thanks section. Alshark also had 3 main game designers, and only one of them, Hisashi Aoyagi, returned as the scenario and game designer of Chilam Balam. The music was composed by Tadashi Sawashita, who did the music for a ton of other Right Stuff games, and even a few tracks for Konami's Lagrange Point on the Famicom. His best material from this period probably all ended up on the Fiend Hunter soundtrack, while Chilam Balam got the leftovers. The soundtrack is mediocre even at its best. It does an average job with the PC-98's monaural FM board, which, don't get me wrong, is good enough for me sometimes, as a PC-98 fan. The music is serviceable, but not great. Likewise, the graphics are overall pretty average for a PC-98 game of this era, though to me the more mature style does make it look a little newer than Alshark, released the previous year. And though there are a lot of cutscenes, they aren't as impressive or visually appealing as the ones in Alshark. It's probably no surprise which of the two games I prefer. I love the story, characters, music, and overall concept of Alshark. But to Chilam Balam's credit, it actually fixes the main problems I had with Alshark, which were the grinding and the confusing dungeons. I never even touched a walkthrough or map. The game always makes sure you know what you have to do next. Instead of the discussion command from Emerald Dragon and Alshark, here it's replaced by the think command, which ironically enough usually just starts a discussion among the party members. I actually can't even find any true walkthroughs for this game online, though there was an official guidebook released back in the day. It is a game mostly driven forward by talking to NPCs in the towns, especially at the saloons, of course, so it probably isn't an RPG you can just kind of fudge your way through without really reading any of the text, like I used to do often during my early years learning Japanese. If you can read the text, however, you'll discover tons of story and lore that I just couldn't fit into this video. But would I recommend that anyone attempts to play Chilam Balam for themselves? Sure I would. While it will take some fiddling to get it to run at a reasonable speed on an emulator, and neither the gameplay nor the presentation make it one of those must-play before you die kind of games by any means, it was nevertheless quite an enjoyable playthrough for this fan of 16-bit era JRPGs. The required time investment was also much less than Alshark, thanks to the game's fast pace and lack of grinding. But most importantly, this is an RPG about cowboys discovering ancient Mayan secrets and Lovecraftian evil gods. Where else are you going to get that? And so even though most of you watching will probably never play this game, I sure hope you enjoyed learning that it exists. Thanks for watching this episode of PC-98 Paradise. I'm Mr. Jakes, and this video was requested by one of my longtime patrons, Regalia776. I'm really glad that he did too, cause this game was completely off my radar. Thanks to everyone for coming along with me on this weird adventure. Let's do another one sometime soon.